Welcome to Face to Face. This is a show about change and about what's next. It's a show that wants to ask questions, peel back the layers of our average everyday experience, and go beyond scratching the surface. We interview amazing people with incredible ideas and stories who have done wild, weird, and wonderful things. Remember that imagination shared creates collaboration, and collaboration creates community, and community inspires social change. I'm David Peck, and this is Face to Face. My interview today is with Professor Nicholas Greco. He is the author of several books, one on David Bowie. He's got a book coming out in a little while called The Rosary and the Microphone, Religious Impulse in U2's Mediated Brand. What a great interview. This is actually part two. What a fun time for me, and I hope for Nicholas as well. But we talked about global care. We talked about looking outward and about U2's approach to what it means to mediate, what it means to get in the way of, what it means to filter. We talk about moments of truth, and Nicholas talks a lot about this idea that we don't really get to see all of each other, and he uses that in sort of, he contextualizes that in terms of U2. We talk about their songs and their music, and why are they so big, and what is it about, what is it that they do that helps to crack open the artifice. It's kind of it's a fun interview. It's about music. It's about metaphor. It's about truth. It's about belief. It's about, as the Edge would say, looking outward. So I hope you enjoy it. Professor Nicholas Greco. He is the associate professor of communications and media, by the way, at Providence University College, and his new book, The Rosary and the Microphone, is coming out in the not-so-distant future, and davidpecklive.com for more information about podcasts and some of my writing as well. Well, welcome to Face to Face. We're joined by a former special guest, and I hope still a very special guest, Professor Nicholas Greco from Providence University College. He's the associate professor of communications and media, and I think are going to talk about all things U2. Nicholas, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. As a special guest and all, I'm very good. Special
guest squared.
Yeah, very. That makes me all tingly. So
there you go. You got a little bit of shiver on that one, did you?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So two big announcements. One, 23 years ago today, Zooropa came out, was released, and from what I understand, your new book was kind of officially announced today, or at least pretty recently, The Rosary and the Microphone, Religious Impulse in U2's Mediated Brand.
Yes, that's right. That was, I guess, officially announced today, which is interesting. I mean, it's no secret that it comes out, I think, in mid 2019. So you could imagine how far I am in its development at this point. But yeah, it was publicly announced. It was posted on the website. And my institution here, Providence, where I teach, has been promoting it a little bit this morning as well. So it's a bit of a big day for me too, because now the book on U2 is really official. It was official when I signed the contract,
right?
Now everybody knows about it, so it makes me feel good.
So mid 2019, is that how you dated as well? Like, did you book that far in advance when you were dating?
Well, what I did was I had to give them a time when when I would be done, and so I proposed early 2018. So
right.
Just to give a bit of time to put the whole thing together. Yeah. I did have some material on U2, and I've presented on U2 before, but for a manuscript I didn't have enough done, so I have to embark on new material. So yeah, I knew that it was 2 years out at the time.
Yeah, no, it sounds so far out, but it'll I'm sure as the author it will come probably faster than you'd like.
That's right. Yeah.
So when you met your wife, did you say, "Hey, are you free in like 2019? Can we do dinner 3.5 years from now? Are you up for that?"
Oh, is that what you were?
That's what I meant.
I said, "Oh, I'm sorry." I'm thinking about myself, and I.
That's right.
Realize, what you're referring to. You
yes.
know, I didn't actually. I was just so flabbergasted that she asked me out on a date.
Oh, come
that I said
on!
Yes immediately, I wasn't. There was no. No bargaining, no questioning, no scheduling.
So we just got the subject for our third podcast.
Dating or the lack thereof.
Maybe both. Yes.
Yeah, very good.
How did you get your wife to ask you out? Should be the
Yeah.
opening question.
You know, I'm a Christian, and I believe in the power of God, and so I think much of it is there.
I don't think God had anything to do with this at all, actually, Nicholas. No.
Well, that's very kind of you.
So tell me about U2. Religious impulse in U2's mediated brand, Rosary and the microphone. I mean, so U2 is, without a doubt, I think we could both agree, all about. They're much about mystery and metaphor and the imaginative side. It seems to me when you look at their lyrics and their music, in my opinion. But tell me about that, the Rosary and the microphone.
Well, you know, the book was what I want the book to do is really talk about how U2 sort of negotiates their place in the world. And so in some ways it's a very theoretical look at U2. What does U2 mean? I think that's fundamentally what I'm trying to discover. What does U2 mean? And I think that we get some of their meaning out of Bono's own sort of spiritual formation. We know of him as being a spiritual person. He, you know, his parents were one was Protestant, one was Catholic, and that coming together of two very conflicting viewpoints created this person, you know, Paul Hewson, who then I think has this religious impulse, a particularly Christian impulse, which seems to inform much of what he does. And I think that this is expanded to the band as well. I mean, we know that most of the members of the band have a kind of Christian background, at least a background. They're informed by Christianity. And we're not really sure exactly, even when we look at Bono, what kind of Christianity he is he's practicing, if you will. You know, it's probably not an orthodox Christianity, and I mean that in sort of the traditional ways we look at a Christian, somebody who goes to church every Sunday, and it's a particularly institutional church, and you know, gives money in the offering and so forth. I suspect his version of Christianity might be a little different from that. But I want to see what it means. Why do they do what they do, and what is it that sort of pushes them along? And so, while I'm not actually asking Bono these questions, I think we could find out a little bit about that impulse by what U2 does, by the music that they produce.
Now, will you be obviously you'll be looking at lots of the literature. Plenty has been written about U2 and so on, in interviews, etc. Are you going to be trying to contact the band directly in any way, Bono directly?
You know, I won't be trying to do that, but and you know, I'm sure some of the listeners will be like, "Well, why don't you?" Because if you don't talk to the band, then all I'm doing is sort of giving my opinion.
It's theoretical at that point, right?
It is theoretical at that point, and I think that is what I'm trying to do. It's a theoretical look, but I think one of the things about accessing the band directly is that you're not necessarily going to get any more information than you do when you're looking at stuff from a distance. In other words, I can ask Bono all kinds of things about his impulse to make music and so forth, and he might tell me things, but the question is whether that is truthful or not. And I think we can get a little bit of truth out of it, of course, but we can never get to the real Paul Hewson or the real Dave Evans or the real, you know, the real people that are behind this band. And I should mention also, I'm interested in how the band mediates itself. So in many ways, I'm interested in what the band means as a brand. Those are two words that are, you know, that are difficult to have together because, you know, band and brand sort of get...
Yeah, sure.
I have trouble saying them in a row because I'll make mistakes. But I'm interested in that.
So that's really interesting to me. So part of the reason for not contacting them is because you want to get to the truth. That's really interesting. Right. I mean, that I think just relates back to the question about metaphor. It seems to me in mystery because what are you saying in a sense that they're always on? So that if you were sitting down with them with a recorder going for, hey, Bono, I'm writing this book, I'd love you're not going to get the real person. You're going to get in your words, the mediated image, or you're going to get U2. You're going to get the rock star, as he often calls himself.
We are always, all of us are always on.
Huh.
And I think that when we're dealing with celebrities, I think even more so. I think the celebrities are always on. You know, we speak to, let's say I send an email to Bono and I want to talk to Bono. Right there, I'm talking to Bono. I'm not talking to Paul Hewson.
Mm.
And if I'm talking to Paul Hewson, I'm not talking to the Paul Hewson that Ali Hewson talks to. You know, it's how many layers of mediation are we going to are we talking about here? And the thing I just find fascinating is that we see U2, Bono, and these other members of the band, The Edge, and so forth. We see them through mediation,
Sure.
and I think we don't have access to them sort of closer than that. But they're saying so much through that mediation.
It's interesting, you know. I was writing some notes earlier today, reflecting on our interview, and I wrote down 3 words: honesty, truth, authenticity, and then I put a bracket around it and said to their music and to their lyrics. I feel like there's a real a humanness and a reality and a truth and an honesty and an authenticity to both the music and the lyrics that sort of reaches in, kind of reaches deep inside me. So it's interesting to me that it has that ability when, you know, part of what it sounds like part of what your thesis is that we're not really getting the real, we're not getting the real work.
No, I think you were mentioning authenticity and so forth in terms of their music. The funny thing is that what U2 is able to do is somehow crack open that artifice, if you will. For some reason, in live concert, we watch them, and there are these moments of truth. I think I may have mentioned this to you at one point, maybe in the last interview, but moments of, for lack of a better word, truth or the divine or something like
Sure.
that happens within their concerts. But you know what? It's still a concert.
Yeah.
And they're still celebrities. And,
Yep.
you know, I was thinking, Zooropa, you said it's 23 years, right? Today?
23 years.
And I saw the cover of Zooropa recently with, just this morning actually, with the European Union stars around the Spaceman cartoon. I didn't remember that they were European Union sort of stuff there. On the cover of that album. But I remember when I saw that, I was reminded of U2 wearing costumes back in 1993 or whenever that would have been, I guess, 93. They wore costumes. They wore sort of these bluish military-looking...
Yeah, I know the ones you're talking about. It's on the...
live in Sydney.
I can see the picture. Yeah. They're very military-like, or almost science fiction-y, almost Star Trek.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Both of those, you know, sort of science fiction-y, military-ish kind of costumes. Well, why were they wearing costumes? I mean, that's a whole sort of layer of being fake and not really.
Yep.
Bono dressed up as Mirrorball Man, the sort of cowboy fellow with foil suit on. All of that is so fake and so sort of playing a part, and it's not real. But for some reason in concert, even when Bono is dressed up as Mr. McFisto, he's able to somehow, we get to see a crack in that facade, and suddenly we're seeing maybe not the real Bono, but we're seeing something real, something true. And I think that's just so fascinating that with a little crack, we get to see into sort of this authenticity.
Well, and I think part of the reason why, you tell me, but I think part of the reason why the fan base has been for U2 has been so committed and focused and alongside, to the point of Bono, pretty much every concert I've ever seen him thanking, you know, the people in the audience for thanks for staying with us, thanks for buying it, you know. I think for me anyway, as I was reflecting on our conversation today, there's been a sense, just musically and lyrically, where they've made contact with reality for me in so many meaningful ways, and it's so ironic based on, you know, the fact that, like you say, that they're celebrities, they're rock stars, they're musicians, they're people who are they're performing, right? Yeah. But in a sense, to your earlier comment, you're saying we're all kind of doing that either way.
Well, we are. I mean, I think that I do agree that celebrity is doing it in a way that, you know, to a degree that we are not.
Right.
But in many ways, we get up in the morning and we go to our closet and we put on something for the day. You know, we put on how we are going to present ourselves to the world, not only the clothing that we're wearing, but also the way that we carry ourselves and the ways that we talk to people, on the ways that, you know, what I reveal about myself to you in an interview or what I reveal to the world in a podcast. There are things that I would never reveal to you or to the world or even to a close friend of mine. There are things that are mine and mine only. And so we don't get to see each other. We don't get to see all of each other. But think about that, going and meeting a friend or whatever, and talking to them in a coffee shop. And then think about the other layers of mediation, if you will, that come between us and a celebrity. So I listen to the music of U2, but I don't only listen to the music of U2, but I see them in concert. But the concert was recorded, last December, and I'm only seeing it now in June or July, I guess it is now. Like there's all these layers of mediation. I'm moving farther and farther away from the source, if you will.
And I've only just recently watched it, but Bono was caught in an interview and a conversation with Eugene Peterson, the author of The Message, and so on. And he says in that interview, it will become, I think, one of my favorite quotes going forward. But quote, art becomes essential, not decorative, close quote. And it's kind of interesting, as we talk about this, going to your closet to find the costume, because costumes are what we put on is decoration. It is
Sure.
It is the facade, right? It's the veneer. It's the first layer of the onion.
But that Eugene Peterson interview, I'm glad that you mentioned it, because I found it. Well, I'll say kindly, I found it interesting.
Yes.
I looked at it. People had told me, "Oh, did you see this?"
Yes.
This Bono and Eugene Peterson interview, and I'm like, "No." And "Oh, you've got to see it. It's so great. Oh, I'm so happy. These wonderful people talking together." And so I watched the video, and I thought it was cute. Again, that's perhaps a mean way of putting it, but they've got Eugene Peterson and his wife in their, I guess that's their country home, I assume.
I guess so, yeah.
Whatever, and Bono sort of comes and visits for tea, and they drink tea together, and then Bono goes off, sort of goes to visit the wise man, and then leaves. But I found it strange, because Eugene Peterson is not the kind of celebrity that Bono is.
Right.
And Bono comes across like a celebrity. He comes across like a rock star.
Right.
To me, anyway. And I can't really fault him for that, but it was a strange juxtaposition of two different people.
So you wanted a little more of Bono then?
I guess I did, but it's only because I expected to see more of Bono, because he was talking with Eugene Peterson.
Right.
And the way that people were presenting it to me, they were saying, well, this is just you get like an honest view of these people. I'm like, no, you don't.
Right.
You get a little bit of Eugene Peterson, maybe, because he doesn't know what it's like to be in front of a.
So if art's purpose is to shine light in the darkness, as Diane Ackerman says, is that what you're trying to do here? Shine a little bit of light on those that are shining light, in the sense.
Yeah, and you know what? The flashlight that I'm using to shine light is a pretty small flashlight, and so it's only going to be revealing a little bit of the big picture.
Right.
And there's probably stuff behind that is still in darkness. So I'm only shining a little bit of light and trying to get a little bit of piece of the big picture. We can't ever get that big picture.
So is there a sense in which, so you're I mean, there's a philosophical question here about knowledge, about epistemology, about how we know what we know. I mean, the whole idea of mediation, it's all about filters and lenses and the way we see the world.
Yeah.
And so do you think that's going to be, you say, you sort of 1/5 of your book is done.
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you're unpacking to some degree?
Well, I think the way that I've promoted the book, if you will, is that I've said that it's primarily a semiotic analysis, and I've suggested that I've even used in some other literature that I've been writing, I've talked about it as a Barthesian thing. So there's a French theorist named Roland Barthes that talks about semiotics. He's sort of one of the more postmodern semioticians. And I really like his work, and I use it for a lot of the academic work that I do. And I think much of my work is what we call phenomenological. In other words, it's my discovery of the world.
Right.
So it's my journey trying to figure out what's going on, and hopefully I'm providing compelling arguments that will show you what I'm thinking and maybe convince you of what I'm thinking. But it's not necessarily the only way to decipher what U2 is doing. I mean, as you mentioned, because this stuff is mediated and we are experiencing it from a distance, my viewpoint is probably different from your viewpoint. My viewpoint of the Bono and Peterson interview was quite different from some of my colleagues.
Sure.
And I can't really discount their reading of it either.
Well, I think on some level, isn't it? I mean, I've been sort of a fan for years of the band, all the way back to October, and trying to get tickets for the war, so way back when, and along the way I have you kind of people, it seems to me there are people who are fans or who are not fans.
Sure.
And I think there's that whole sort of group of, I don't know, dare I say, Christian people who wanted to be fans of U2, but weren't quite because of their, I don't know, the way that, Bono would sort of dance on both sides of the fence. I'm not using any of my own language here, by the way. I'm trying to recollect. And so seeing him in an interview like that, it's kind of like, oh, okay, finally. He comes out. He comes out. He's a believer,
well, I think
which makes me crazy, by the way, on a certain level.
But he has garnered praise, I think, from many Christian communities in the last little while. From a lot of the evangelical church in particular, I think has really appreciated him in the last little while, more so than they did certainly in the earlier part of his career. I don't know if I told you the story last time about one of my youth group friends. That we had if you can believe it, we had a record burning party way back in the.
Oh, you got to be kidding me!
We did. This is the good old Pentecostals.
I think we may have to end this conversation now, Nicholas. It's an outrage.
Listen, I didn't burn any of my. One of my colleagues did. She had the double vinyl of Rattle and Hum, and so she brought it to the. I don't remember if there was actually a bonfire, but in any case, she destroyed it, only to buy the CD a few years later.
Oh,
so
that's
it wasn't
hilarious.
so bad. But what I mean to say is that at a certain point, a certain point in U2's history, they were not appreciated by the Christian community. We might have listened to them because we knew Bono and we knew all of them except for maybe Adam. They were Christians, and so we could listen to them. But I think they've become more part of the Christian community, if you will, because of Bono's statements and sort of social justice push and so forth. I think what has happened, though, and I could be wrong, this is just my opinion, but I think that as Bono and the band have become more accepted by the evangelical community, they have been less accepted by the greater community,
Interesting.
society, if you will. Because I see in all kinds of places, Bono's a hypocrite. U2 are, what a pompous fellow. U2 gives their, who is U2 and why are they on my phone? This kind of, there is really this kind of, my parents will love your book, that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, sadly, and I'm pretty sure I noted this in my I brought my son to see Songs of Innocence, the most recent tour, and he was 9 at the time, and it was more for me than it was for him, and it was a moment and on a lot of levels. But will he? I know U2 is very concerned about finding new listeners, and I wonder, what the future for them is going to be. But, it's interesting. So 23 years ago, Zooropa comes out. I read an article not that long ago in Spin Magazine from a few years ago that said that this album almost killed their career. And
that Zooropa did?
That Zooropa did. I don't know that I would agree with that, but I'm no music critic by any means. But it's interesting, that 23 years ago, there seemed to be still going pretty strong.
They had a few albums that killed their career, right? I mean, I think it was Achtung Baby was such a huge thing for them.
Yeah.
It in many ways, I remember back then, some people in my circles would say, I really don't like U2 anymore. I like their older stuff.
That was the line. There should have been a T-shirt out there. I like U2's older stuff.
Right. But that's people that were listening to Unforgettable Fire and Joshua Tree maybe. But that's all that was. And with Achtung Baby, they didn't like the sort of distorted vocals and stuff like that. Zooropa pushed it very quickly after that, right? Zooropa came out a year or 2 years after Achtung Baby, and so I don't think the listenership had time to sort of get comfortable in what Achtung Baby was all about. And so Zooropa comes out, and Daddy's Gonna Pay for Your Crashed Car is on that, and we don't know how to take that.
Or Lemon.
Right, or Lemon, exactly, or a number of other tracks.
Yeah, songs.
The Wanderer on that album,
which I love today. But I understand. Like there was a sense in which they almost turned their back on melody, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean they had Numb on that album, and there's no melody at all in that, and it's you have to question, where is the band that I loved so much that was with Rattle and Hum, let's say. That band is gone. But there was a few times when this was their destroying album, if their career destroying album.
Yes.
I mean, people said that about pop as well. That
Yes.
pop was it. But they continued on. I suspect some people said that Songs of Innocence was it.
Well, and also, for sure, some of the talk after the iTunes, which I still to this day, I mean, I think largely it was rooted in jealousy. I really truly believe that.
Yeah.
I mean, what a genius idea. What a brilliant approach. And it's something. Okay, I got to read you this quote. Can I read you this quote from Bill Flanagan's, which I'm sure you've read, Until the End of the World. Check this out. What chapter is in it? Doesn't matter. Quote, record stores could become obsolete as music is delivered over cable, telephone wires, or satellite transmission directly into consumers' homes. This raises amazing possibilities. One is that in the next century, top acts such as U2 will no longer need record companies. They will be able to make their albums and sell them directly to their audience by direct transmission, close quote. Is that not hysterical?
That is hysterical.
Oh, man.
Was that Bono who said that then?
No, this is I'm pretty sure this is Flanagan. Yeah, like imagine a future in which U2 finishes making an album at the factory, capital F, and then just walks over to the computer, puts it online, and waits for their fans to punch in credit card numbers and download. Well, or puts it into there for free.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, or they just find it on their phone in the next.
That's right, and are royally pissed off.
Exactly. Very, very upset. I mean, I think the whole iTunes thing was a great business decision, but it might have been handled a bit differently.
Right.
In terms of its distribution. You know what? I was thinking this week after I watched the Live in Paris DVD, I thought to myself, I wonder if U2 is ever going to stop touring because they're a little older now. Bono's had all kinds of physical problems. Mm-hmm. I'm sure they've got years left in them. I'm not saying that, but I just wondered if they would stop touring because they could make for a really, really great studio band. I mean, they've worked with Brian Eno and other producers that have, that sort of know all the ins and outs of a studio and would be able to make all kinds of very interesting music if they decided to sort of go the Beatles route and not tour again. But then I thought they can't do that.
They can't do that. No.
They are a touring band as well. In many ways, they're kind of double-barreled that way. They've got both of those things. So.
Well, I just read a piece too recently, and partially, I guess, because there's more in the news about them these days than there has been for a while. But The Edge talking about, we're kind of itching to get back on tour, just because the Songs of Innocence tour, I guess, was so well received ultimately, and having been pretty recently, again, it's just there's a I don't know, as crazy as it sounds, there's this. My wife doesn't like it. She doesn't like the crowd think, the Orwellian kind of crowd think at a concert, Elizabeth. But I actually, and nobody knows me enough to know this, but I ironically appreciate that sense of community. And it really probably only has to do for me with you too. So I don't know if that's about recollection, mediation, my own sense of brokenness bubbling to the surface. I don't know what it is, but
you were telling me and you're telling the world all of these things about your personal psyche, but we don't really get to know the real David Peck, even with all of this revelation.
Well, you should see the costume I'm wearing right now.
Oh, forget it. You see what I'm wearing right now.
Yes, I actually, believe it or not, am wearing a 15-year-old U2 shirt, just in honor of our conversation today. Yeah, all that you can't leave behind shirt.
Well, I'm wearing glasses and I'm kind of bald, so that's...
We're in good company.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Zooropa, somebody also said that it freed U2 from itself. What do you think about that? I mean, here's a band always shifting. I mean, I'm sure I can hear Bono saying, I'm not interested in being the same I was yesterday. I'm all about change. I'm all about the future. I mean, talk about change, social justice, social change, reducing the gap, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, in a sense, even though they're mediated, they are. I mean, the Zoo TV tour was all about mediation. Yeah. Right? Calling it out and saying, this is ridiculous. Look at the way we live and we operate. This is everything other than being human.
Yeah, and I think
right?
that they've continued that.
And they continue to seemingly do that, it seems to me. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, take a look at Innocence and Experience. He's walking on Cedarwood Road, but it's not really Cedarwood Road. It's just a pretend theater would wrote.
Right, right.
There's a whole section in Even Better Than the Real Thing where the whole band is standing in between the screens, and you can't actually see the band. You see them on screen. That's very interesting stuff. They're completely mediated. They disappeared. I mean, was Zooropa a way for them to reinvent themselves,
Yes.
or a way for them?
Yeah, that's I guess what I'm getting at. Yeah.
Was it? Maybe, but I think Acting Baby did that already. But it did that because people expected a certain type of U2. I think people expected the Joshua Tree again, and U2 couldn't handle that. And I suspect that because of, in many ways, Zooropa didn't free the band. It may have constrained the band, because now everything that U2 does for the last 23 years has had to be new and novel and better than what came before. The live shows need to be bigger, more spectacular. It needs to be a spectacle. And if anything, it was because of Zoo TV and because of Zooropa that the band is in the place that they are today. Now, there's a lot of positive to that, too.
Sure, of course.
It's pretty compelling material. But it's also, I cannot imagine being U2, for a whole range of reasons, but I can't imagine being them simply for the pressure that they're under to produce material that is novel.
Well, that's always, it seems to me, challenging the status quo. Musically, I couldn't really speak to that, but boy, I can say from a lyrical perspective and just from a social perspective, it seems to me. It's remarkable on one hand that they're still together. And that they are still challenging the status quo and taking risks. I don't know if you've seen this, but it's really interesting. You should check it out. I can send you the link, but it's an ad for The Edge's new Fender guitar that's being released that he's had some input in, and obviously
I wasn't aware of that.
And signs it, and it's a great little 5-minute clip. But in the clip, he talks about falling forwards. And he talks about a spirit of discovery. And this is where I feel like, it's not that I'm taking issue with your thesis at all, but I feel like, oh, geez, that actually was a little bit of The Edge, still mediated, I should say, say Dave Evans. Right. That was a little bit of Dave Evans. Because yes, there's, it seems to me there is going to be crossover. And I think, isn't that what art is really all about, that shining of the light in the darkness? It's about trying to break down. It's so ironic, they've got this massive screen for the tour that they're walking through that was amazing, but it's still a bloody screen. Yeah. Right? It's still an image. It's still they're playing, anyway, it's just it's really, really kind of ironic and paradoxical.
And theoretically I'm watching it on my own screen at home.
That's right.
So I've got, this screen and that screen separating me from the band.
The simulacra.
Yeah, sure. Doubly mediated. It's multiple layers of mediation. But I think
welcome to the desert of the real. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, now we're going to start quoting from The Matrix. Right?
That's right.
From Baudrillard himself.
Baudrillard himself. Yes. Yeah.
But I think we agree. What you're suggesting when you say we see a piece of Dave Evans, we do. We just see a little piece, though. And so I think we're agreeing. We don't see the whole thing.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Many times we want to see the thing. That's in some of my past work. That's what I've talked about. This idea of desire, a celebrity desire. So fan desire for a celebrity is oftentimes we want access to the real person, and so we grab onto the fragments that we see, whether that be fan magazines or music videos or whatever. We grab onto all of these things in order to get fragments of who we think the real person is. But we can never get to the real person.
Well, and isn't there a sense, Nicholas, and forget, lay the... here I'm asking you to lay some of your own mediation aside, but,
sure.
That academic edge, that theoretical... isn't that what we're all really trying to get to, this sense of being at home, this sense of being included, the camaraderie, commiseration, connection with others, and so on, as corny and as that may sound? I think that's what we're trying to tap into.
You might know the author Frederick Buechner.
Yes,
the well-known Christian author, and in I think one of his books. I don't remember the title of it, but it's one of his memoirs. He's got a set of 3 memoirs, and this was one of his later ones. And he talks about, he uses a strange example, but he talks about walking down the street and seeing someone walk by you, and he makes the suggestion, he says something to the effect of, you know, that person that you see walk by you and you have this terrible longing to be with them physically, to sort of to love them, to know them. And he says that moment, that sort of moments, he doesn't use the word lust, but I'll just throw it on to Beekner, that, you know, this sort of lustful moment, if you will, that is simply it's a kind of a trace of that innate sense that we want to know people and to in turn be known fully. And that is something that we will never experience on earth, but in terms of spirituality, we will know that once we get to the next level, get to heaven within the Christian
tradition. Isn't this why a great conversation over a bottle of wine and a couple of Marlboro Lights can be so rewarding?
Well, because we get to know each other a little bit more.
How many conversations? I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've been with people all over the world and kind of left on my bike or my skateboard back a few years ago, or driving away, going, "Wow, that was amazing." And you don't. It's not that you voice those words, but you are a different person now, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you can probably find a few examples of when that really doesn't happen.
Right. Oh, for sure, without a doubt. And you know what, Nicholas? Maybe more often than not, it doesn't happen. And all the more reason why we so long and crave it.
Yeah, sure. I think you are mentioning something very important, though. You're mentioning the idea that, you know, where do our desires come from? I think they come from us wanting to be whole, being full, being healed, if you will. That's where our desires come from. And, you know, within advertising, it's, you know, we want that product because we think we'll be made complete, but of course we're not. We always want the next product that comes around. And so it's, in many ways, we are enticed, but we're never satisfied. But the desire to be satisfied is what's at the root of that. And I think that's really at the root of all of our desiring, whether it's celebrity desiring. You know, why do we listen to the new U2 album? Because we want to know more about U2.
Right.
Why am I writing a book on U2? Because I want to know more about them. And I think I want to know them fully, and I won't be able to, but I'm going to really try. And people aren't going to read my book because they want to hear about what I have to say, necessarily, but they'll read it because they want to know what I think about U2.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think you're right. It's about desiring something more, to be sort of in communion with people, to know them fully. And in turn, if you're able to know them fully, they might be able to know you fully.
So are they the greatest rock band of all time? Crazy, silly question. I'm sure we got a few groans from our listeners there on that question.
Probably more groans at my responses, considering they were completely wrong. But you know, are they the best rock band in the world, the greatest rock band? You know, I asked my wife this morning when I was watching a little bit of U2, actually this morning, I said to her, why are they so big? Why are they so big? Like, what have they done to be this massive band?
Right.
And, you know, we weren't able to answer that question. So, you know, they are in many ways the greatest rock band that ever was. And I'm sure that your listeners are groaning right now, especially those who, you know, all the people who are fans of U2 are like, yes.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
then everybody else is like, no, you're crazy. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not even going to read your book.
Yeah.
Like, that's the debate. But, I mean, you certainly cannot ignore them. You know, the person who said, who is U2 and why are they on my phone? I would say to that person, whether you are a fan or not, get to know who U2 is. Just know who they are, because these kinds of cultural shapers don't come around very often.
Why do you think it, you know, I was going to say, why do you think it is that something, you know, because, I mean, Bono is certainly self-parodied over the years, and I mean, I think this is, again, an attempt to get to the real, I guess, human beings, I suppose, or at least to break down some of that idol of mediation, I guess, trying to unpack their humanness a little bit more here and there. But why is it that these guys who are, I don't know, to some degree, facades, I suppose you could say, you know, able to connect, as you say, and to be such, you know, cultural critics? And I mean, I guess that's popular art, I suppose, on some level.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it is a bit of a puzzle, isn't it? How they are able to do this when they are basically, I mean, they are rock stars, and Bono has said it before. I'm a rock star that's trying to change the world, which is a ridiculous position to be in.
Yeah.
He suggested it, but in many ways, by being self-effacing or doing
Yes.
these kinds of things, in my mind, it doesn't actually give us any more information regarding Paul Hewson or Bono, but it allows us to be more friendly with him. Oh, he's making fun of himself, so we'll let him give a little bit more. We'll let him speak to Congress because he knows how crazy it is for a rock singer to be speaking in front of a Congress subcommittee. So we'll let him talk because he knows how silly this is, because we think it's silly. So as long as he knows that it's silly, then we'll let him talk.
So I'm gonna read another quote, and
Okay.
and you're right. I mean, I think there is a sense in which people who are critics, or people who are not fans, and then the critics and so on, they look at that, so whatever, the hypocrisy of it, or the excess of being a rock star and trying to actually, um, make sense of the world. But listen to this from a speech that, wow, I don't know, 95 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what year it was, but I can certainly dig that up. As survivors, quote, as survivors of the Holocaust, both Hannah Arendt and Primo Levi implored us to tell our stories. And we must, not just to make real the oppressed and the oppressor, not just to break down the idea of separateness, that we understand each other better, not just so we don't forget. We tell our stories to put flesh and blood on new ideas and to play them out as Thaliah Theatre has done for 150 years now with such wit and style. To them, I'd like to say thank you.
Mm.
I mean, this is like, I don't know. This is a guy who clearly was, I don't know, pretty thoughtful rock star. It seems to me. Now, maybe my fanishness is coming out,
Possibly,
but I don't know. I don't know a lot of other rock stars out there writing and speaking the way he has for so many years, or the way that U2 has, collectively.
Right, and I think U2 is in a good position in that they have decided to use the pedestal that they're on to be outspoken in terms of politics, whether it's local politics, in terms of the Irish conflict, or what was it? I think Flanagan talks about going to atomic energy, nuclear power plants in the UK, and sort of trying to close them down. That from the local to the global. That's
They've always been activists always, really.
Yeah, and they've been able to use their platform. As their platform has gotten bigger and higher, they've been able to use that. I mean, I've often talked about the stage that they are on is not only a physical stage in which they show this spectacle, but it's also a stage from which they can sort of give out their reimagining of the world. They can convey what they think the world should be like.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? The stage is not only a sort of stage where they, a concert is recorded and a DVD is made, but it's a stage that then travels the world. And so it literally goes from place to place, and it is in all those places that they're able to convey what they think the world should be like. And that's a fascinating spot for them to be in, that they're able to do that. There will always be people who say that they are hypocrites and they are wasting their time. And they, at the end of the day, the Vatican does have all of that artwork, millions of dollars of artwork and so forth. But they also do so much good for the world too. It's the same kind of thing. I mean, Bono and U2 are a rock band. That's what they are. By definition, they sell millions of albums. They go on tour, and the tours themselves cost millions of dollars for the band and for people who are attending. So that's one thing. But they're also doing so much good with that particular stage that they're going on.
I wonder, the quote that I just read. I mean, how many rock stars are reading Hannah Arendt?
Hannah Arendt, yeah.
I mean, to me, I find that really interesting. And that's not to say that there aren't many out there doing it, but at his age at the time, would he have been 30 at the most? I mean, not a guy that went to university. I mean, clearly somebody digging a little bit deeper than most. Certainly, in the context of speaking about mediated brands, and celebrities in costumes, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
but
I wonder to what degree. I mean, I wonder. I mean, the impact that that's had on his lyrics or on the band as a whole, right?
don't forget, David, that popular music is all about mediation, if you will. It's all about celebrity. It's all about artifice. Every time we say that one band is more authentic than the other, we have to remember that that band that we think is authentic really isn't. It's part of a system in which people go on stage and they present themselves as celebrities, and they make recordings, and these recordings are circulated, and it's not real. I mean, there's certain things where we could say, well, Bob Dylan is so real. Well, no, he's not. His real name is Robert Zimmerman, and he's not real. We're only seeing what he wants us to see. And so I think when we talk about U2, we always have to be careful. You're right that Bono and the band have certain, they have been informed by things that allow them to really effectively communicate with their audience, and maybe with even a broader audience. You're right. Katy Perry hasn't sat in front of a U.S. congressional committee lately.
Right. Not lately, anyway. No.
Yeah, right.
I haven't checked Twitter recently, but who knows?
Right. But so you're right that they situate themselves, they inform themselves. So that they're able to do this, and maybe not all rock stars can. But we must remember that Bono is a rock star.
Yes.
So the difference between Bono and any other, and other rock stars, not any other, but other rock stars, is that Bono seems to be using his power and his visibility to try to make a difference. What he feels needs to be done in the world, and not everybody agrees with him. And many people would say, well, you're being hypocritical. And I think his response is, I have this power and I'm going to use it. If I relinquish my power, which means if I relinquish my place within U2, my place within high society, then I no longer have this power. So that's part of it too.
So you and your wife speak this morning. Well, how did they get so big? How about I toss this in there that I actually think it's their unmediation, in a sense, that allowed them to get so big. So their ability to connect, or at least to act as a catalyst for me to connect with my own brokenness and my own sense of being human, and allowed me to reimagine it in a way, if that makes any sense at all. So I still haven't found what I'm looking for instance, or that the 60,000 people singing Psalm 40 as they exit the exhibition stadium here in Toronto in 1980, whenever the heck it was, 1989, 90. A life-changing moment for me. So I don't know, maybe you'd speak more about the community and so on, but it's interesting to me that they become the catalyst for me. And so I think for me, they've certainly, I'm a fan because of that, in a sense, because of that connection, because they reached out and touched my soul.
Oh, sure, and I mean, certainly, I think that's the case. That these bands, lots of popular music is like that. It touches us in places that other things don't touch us, and so, in many ways, that's what U2 is. We've talked, me and my colleagues here, who are also fans of U2. We've talked about the church experience of going to a U2 concert. That there's nothing like it. No sense of community like a U2 show. But, in many ways, I'm not sure that it's necessarily the realness of U2 that we're experiencing. I just think about these events, the last interview that we had together, you asked what the greatest songs were of all time, and I mentioned something, and it was wrong, but it's, 40 at the end of the Chicago DVD, where Adam Clayton plays the guitar, and I said that this was the world's best rock song or something ridiculous like that. That's what I mentioned. But it's important to me because it breaks what we expect U2 to be. It breaks that artifice ever so slightly, so we see a crack. And the break is simply that, Adam is playing guitar. He's not supposed to be playing guitar. Right. Why is he playing guitar? Well, it's because I think probably it's a really hard bass line, and so the Edge decided to take it, or something like that. I don't know, but the guitar is such an important part of that band that we don't expect to see Adam Clayton playing it. The minute we do, something is different and something breaks. And I'm sorry to be so forthright about it, but the fact that within popular discourse, Adam Clayton is not the Christian of the band, him playing guitar, which is a prominent position within the band, during a song like 40 makes a difference. He's playing a guitar, which is a prominent instrument for U2, during a song that is biblical based, and that is a break. And it's fascinating because you listen to that and you say, boy, something is going on here. Even the most non-Christian of us can be embraced by Christ himself here in this song as we all sing together. So very strange moment.
Tell me, you talk about on the Equinox Publishing site, talks about your book and this sense of global concern, global care, this sense of others. And I don't know if this is what grates people the wrong way about U2 and Bono and so on. Their sort of their excess, and yet on one hand, and their ability to say, hang on, there's this whole other. There's another few billion people out here who like look at the gap. Look at the gap, and you need to be aware of it. And I think there are thousands, millions of people who are aware of that today because of the work they've done, because of the music and so on, and the experience. And so, I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about that concern and that care.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head. That's why a lot of people don't appreciate what U2 does, or what Bono in particular does, because of that gap. They talk about global care, they talk about Africa and so forth, but then they still have tax havens for their money so that they don't get taxed, or whatever the cases might be.
I remember. I remember when that came out. I'm
not. That's not my area of expertise, so I don't know how they're sort of dodging policy. But in any case, that's part of the story of U2 as well, that they have this excess.
And it kind of makes me crazy a little bit that this is, to me, a comment about how none of us are really comfortable with our own sense of being human. I mean, for me, this is about, Nicholas, for me, this is about brokenness. For me, this is about getting back home, and it's about the hanging out over a bottle of wine, and it's that inclusion, it's that sense of relational camaraderie, as crazy as that might sound, but that's where we're trying to get to. And so when we see somebody else saying, hey, this is what we need, and yet we're so willing to point out the inconsistencies, right?
Yeah, I mean, U2 can be a mirror for all of us, if you will. I mean, we see within U2 the kinds of problems that we all have. So we all present ourselves as something different than what we really, really are. Maybe we do it out of necessity, whereas U2 does it because they're able to. But we present something other than what we really are to the world. We can't really present who we are. There's even between us, if we were speaking to each other face to face, we still can't access all of who we are to each other at this point in our lives. And we have these inconsistencies. We might give to charity, but we're still really mean people. Or we might love someone, but then we hate that other person. Or there are all kinds of inconsistencies, and we see that in U2. U2 then is a mirror for us, and we don't really like what we look like, and so we sort of. I'm really putting U2 in a lofty spot here to say how,
that's okay.
Exactly. That they reflect the world.
Oh, we just lost a few more listeners. Yeah.
Yeah. You may have lost a couple of minutes. Once you introduced me, I think you.
It's the Greco-Peckian love-in again.
Exactly. Yeah. Let's turn that off. I mean, there is that, and people don't like it, but still, I think U2 has done very well to take some of that gaze, if you will, from the audience, to take the audience's gaze and deflect it away from them onto issues of global concern. And so, you're at a concert and they're playing Bullet the Blue Sky, and suddenly you see a graphic that looks like the European Union flag, but when you look a little closer, it's a circle of what appear to be drowned refugees. And suddenly the gaze moves from the audience sort of looking at the band and saying, this is a great concert, I love Bono, to, oh my goodness, what's going on in the world? We need to be concerned about European Union and what's going on in the EU, and not necessarily, EU immigration policies, but maybe the idea that the EU is becoming more closed and so forth.
It's fascinating, as you were sort of unpacking that, I imagine the guy who paid $200 for his ticket being really ticked that he came for a rock concert and it ends up getting preached to.
I think this is the thing with U2 though, is that when we go to a U2 concert, we don't really. It's not that we're duped. It's not that we're tricked into it, but it's part of the package.
It's part of the package, yeah.
You know, we know what we're getting into. Maybe some people don't, and they want to hear Where the Streets Have No Name or something.
That's right. Just play the War album again, will you?
Yeah, well, I suspect that they're looking for something a little later than that. I still haven't found what I'm looking for.
That's
something,
right.
You know, they want that stuff, but they don't. But they come away with something more than that. And I'm not sure how many of them really catch it. They might just say, boy, that Bono was good with his United States Stars and Stripes umbrella, and wasn't it sad when it broke?
Right.
I don't know if you get that reference. There's I think it's Pop Mart's tour. One of these tours, Bono is playing around with an umbrella that has the Stars and Stripes. This is also during Bullet the Blue Sky, and he intentionally breaks the umbrella. Sort of, it inverts on itself like an umbrella would in a storm. But he does that, and it's critical of U.S. foreign policy is basically what he's doing there. We don't get that all the time. We might just think, oh, that's kind of funny that he broke his umbrella. But, you know, a bunch of the people in the audience might get it. But they're sympathetic to the band anyway, so I don't think it's a problem.
So we probably, I mean, I really don't want to end this conversation, and and maybe we'll circle back in, when is it, 2019?
Yeah, 2019 is the publication date.
2019, the Rosary and the Microphone. Why the hell is it $100 for hardback?
I have no control over that. That's pricing. That's academic pricing.
I may have to write an email after this.
You know, you can buy the soft cover for $30. That's
right.
A little bit more.
I bet it's going to go up between now and then. Actually,
I'm not sure. I suspect that the soft cover might stay at 30 or maybe even go down. If by 2019 Equinox has EPUB versions, then I suspect you'll be able to get it for a little cheaper. I know that my book on David Bowie at one point was going for $4 on Kindle. So, you know, nothing makes a scholar feel good like their books going for $4 on Kindle.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
yeah.
So I'm sure it'll be available somewhere.
What? So have you changed your mind about favorite U2 songs since we last spoke?
You know what? I was so scarred by that experience. I'm not going to enter into that discussion again. Favorite U2, you know, the best U2 songs ever. I'll let others make a decision. You know, I was hoping to get, you know, 1 million tweets from people saying how they either agreed or disagreed with me, but obviously people don't care what I think. So. You know.
Well, hopefully we're going to change that with this interview and this new book coming out soon. Yeah, like I said, maybe we'll do another one when the book is released or before then, because without a doubt, one of the favorite things for me, I enjoy talking about more than anything, is U2. Without a, so I'm going to quote one of my favorite songs to sort of bring it to an end. But something is about to give. I can feel it coming. I think I know what it is. I'm not afraid to die. I'm not afraid to live. And when I'm flat on my back, I hope to feel like I did. Do you know the reference?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite songs of all time of U2, and it didn't get a lot of airplay, and you know they did play it. I think there's an acoustic version of it that they when they played on the maybe Vertigo tour. I can't remember exactly, but
yeah, it could be.
I have such fond memories not only of the album, but I bought the album in Singapore, and I was falling in love with Elizabeth at the time. 9/11. I've got this crazy memory of walking through San Francisco Airport, listening to this song, and it connected on so many levels. And I think one of the things for U2 and me, it's the mystery. It's that sense. It's the sense of unknown. It's that sense of uncertainty. They've pretty much, it seems to me, come through. Have always been comfortable with it, at least in their music.
Yeah.
Maybe not in their real lives, and maybe that's what's allowed them to create that sense of connection and community, because they are breaking down some of that mediation in a way to say, this is who we are within this broken framework. You know?
Don't forget that right at the end of the song, right at the end of that verse or whatever, the chorus, I think it says, I hope that this is not goodbye.
Yes.
So in some ways they also sort of want to hold on to that connection with their audience too.
Yeah, it's good. Nicholas Greco, he's the Associate Professor of Communications and Media at Providence, and he is working on a book called The Rosary and the Microphone, Religious Impulse in U2's Mediated Brand. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, what a great time. And I'll look forward to getting this out onto the airwaves one day. That quote from Bill Flanagan, it's so funny.
That's awesome.
Isn't that awesome one day they'll be able to do this. I wonder what we'll be doing with podcasts in 25 years.
Exactly, yeah.
Thanks for your time today.
Yeah, very much. Okay. Take care.